What do the Old West, trains, fine food, and St. Louis Union Station have in common? Author Stephen Freed will tell you Fred Harvey and his Harvey Girls.
The Harvey Company in its heyday was the largest hospitality business in the world.
Freed wrote Fred Harvey's biography, Appetite for America, and describes the transplanted Englishman as Ray Kroc before McDonald's and J.W. Marriott before Marriott Hotels. Harvey started his first restaurant in St. Louis in the late 1850s.
And then he got out of the business for a number of years. And then in his early 40s decided to get back into it because he traveled the railroads a lot.
What Fred Harvey found as he traveled out west during the glory days of train travel was that the food was terrible at each stop.
Keep in mind, there weren't Union stations then. Railroads had their own tracks, their own stations.
Harvey believed that clean, well-organized restaurants with good food and efficient service would lure travelers. The owners of Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe rail line agreed, and the first chain of Harvey restaurants were built with some 60 locations in what was considered cowboy country.
And so they started very small, just in Kansas. They expanded into Colorado, into New Mexico, and Arizona, and then all the way across to the Pacific.
But the men hired to serve along the railway didn't meet Harvey's high standards. His next innovative idea was recruiting educated young women called Harvey Girls.
Here she comes!
In 1946, the release of the George Sidney movie The Harvey Girls, starring Judy Garland, cemented their legendary status.
The Harvey system, I must say, primarily pertains to the absolute perfection in the way we feed the trains.
Perfection in the dining room, perfection in the dorm. We even want perfection in the Harvey uniform.
These were wholesome girls from the Midwest and East Coast who served patrons in nun-like uniforms. Harvey Girls helped bring a bit of sophistication to all of Fred Harvey's restaurants, particularly to the untamed West.
You don't blow on your soup. You fan it with your hat.
Oh.
Black shirt waist, cuffs neat and trim. The apron must be spotless from the collar to the hem.
And from the 1880s through the 1940s, 100,000 single women in America had this experience.
Wherever a Harvey house appears, civilization is not far behind.
Harvey Girls were true pioneers in the 1870s when few single women traveled or worked outside the home.
They were adventurous women when you think about it.
St. Louis Union Station historian Darlene Minetti says following the Great Depression of the late 1800s, the economy was rebooted. That led to St. Louis building the first major Union Station in the country in 1894. Fred Harvey was hired to service the entire building, from retail stores to his signature restaurants. It was his only business that was not situated along the Santa Fe Railway. The Station Grill was one, if not the Harvey restaurant.
Correct, it was the main one. But up until the Depression, it was thriving.
Imported linens and tableware along with prime steak was a classic Harvey trademark.
One steak, very rare.
Not everyone could become a Harvey Girl. It was something of a status symbol. They had to be single between the ages of 17 and 30, be able to travel, and sign a 6-month contract. They also went through some rigorous training.
They were very strict about what you did, the way you did it, and everything. You had to be a little special. You couldn't just be run-of-the-mill.
94-year-old Mary Spiller of Afton was just 17 years old in 1944, the youngest to be hired as a Harvey Girl along with her older sister. It was wartime, and Union Station was teeming with troops.
We would be waiting on some soldiers, and we're giggling and going on, and Mr. Parker would walk by and he'd go, he'd stamp his finger, get going,
In 2019, during the 125th anniversary of St. Louis Union Station, Mary returned to the place that meant so much to her so many years ago.
And it always was special in my life.
She kept an ashtray and her uniform bow tie, but Mary says her older sister left with much more.
There was a soldier that was transferred, and she waited on him one day, and he was stationed at Jefferson Barracks, and she wound up marrying him.
While Fred Harvey may not be a familiar name to many, the contribution of his Harvey Girls along with St. Louis Union Station may be his lasting legacy in the Gateway City.
The apron